First contact and cultural shock. The vast expanse of space had always called to Commander Ilara Chen. As she stood on the bridge of the Earth's first interstellar vessel, the ESS Horizon, she couldn't help but feel a sense of awe at the enormity of their mission. It had been 3 months since Earth received the mysterious signal from deep space, a message that defied all known forms of communication, but unmistakably bore the hallmarks of intelligent design. "Commander," Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez called out, his voice tinged with excitement, "we're approaching the coordinates. Sensors are picking up something." Ilara leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the main view screen. At first, there was nothing but the inky blackness of space, punctuated by distant stars. Then, slowly, a shape began to materialize. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, a massive structure that seemed to defy the laws of physics, its surface shimmering with an iridescent glow. "My God," whispered Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the team's xenobiologist. "It's beautiful." As they drew closer, the true scale of the alien construct became apparent. It dwarfed the horizon, making their state-of-the-art ship seem like a mere toy in comparison. Ilara felt a mix of excitement and trepidation course through her veins. This was it, humanity's first contact with an alien civilization. "Open a channel," Ilara commanded, her voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. "Let's hope they're in a talking mood." For several tense minutes, nothing happened. The crew of the Horizon held their breath, waiting for any sign of acknowledgement. Then, without warning, a beam of light engulfed their ship. Alarms blared as systems went haywire. "What's happening?" Ilara shouted over the cacophony. Before anyone could respond, the world around them seemed to dissolve. When Ilara's vision cleared, she found herself standing in a vast, circular chamber. The walls pulsed with an otherworldly energy, and in the center stood 3 beings unlike anything she had ever imagined. They were tall, easily 9 feet in height, with bodies that seemed to be composed of swirling mist and starlight. Where faces should have been, there were patterns of light that shifted and changed, conveying emotions in a way that was somehow both alien and deeply familiar. "Welcome, children of Earth," a voice resonated in Ilara's mind. It wasn't sound, but pure thought, rich with emotions and imagery. "We are the Axiom, and we have long awaited this moment." Ilara struggled to find her voice, overwhelmed by the sheer alienness of the situation. "I am Commander Ilara Chen of Earth," she finally managed. "We come in peace and in the spirit of friendship." The beings, the Axiom, seemed to ripple with amusement. "Peace," the voice in her mind echoed. An admirable sentiment, but one that may soon be tested. As Ilara and her crew tried to process his cryptic statement, images began to flood their minds. They saw worlds teeming with life, civilizations rising and falling, and a darkness spreading across the galaxy. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. What are you showing us?" Dr. Tanaka asked, her scientific curiosity overcoming her initial shock. "History," the Axiom replied. "The cosmic dance of life and death, creation and destruction. And now you humans have joined this dance." Over the next few hours, or was it days? Time seemed to lose all meaning in this place. The Axiom shared knowledge beyond humanity's wildest dreams. They spoke of technologies that could reshape planets, of the intricate web of life that connected all sentient beings across the galaxy, and of the looming threat that had prompted them to reach out to Earth. As the humans absorbed this torrent of information, they found themselves grappling with fundamental questions about their place in the universe. Everything they had ever known or believed was being challenged. "But why us?" Lieutenant Rodriguez asked. "We're barely out of our solar system. Surely there are other, more advanced civilizations you could have contacted." The Axiom's response was tinged with what could only be described as fond exasperation. "You humans are unique in ways you have yet to fully comprehend. Your adaptability, your creativity, your sheer stubborn determination. These qualities make you invaluable in the coming conflict." Ilara felt a chill run down her spine. Conflict? What conflict? The chamber darkened, and new images filled their minds. Vast armadas of biomechanical ships, worlds being consumed by some sort of cosmic plague, and civilizations far more advanced than humanity falling before this onslaught. The void, the axiom explained. A force of uncreation that seeks to unmake all that is. It has slumbered for eons, but now it stirs, and when it fully awakens, it will threaten not just individual worlds, but the very fabric of existence. The gravity of the situation settled over the human delegation like a heavy blanket. They had come seeking knowledge and friendship, only to find themselves thrust into a war beyond their comprehension. "What can we possibly do against something like that?" Ilara asked, feeling overwhelmed, but determined not to show weakness. The axiom's response was both reassuring and terrifying. "More than you can imagine, Commander. Your species possesses a spark, a potential that, if nurtured, could turn the tide of this cosmic war." As the initial shock began to wear off, Ilara and her crew found themselves engaged in a crash course on galactic politics, advanced technologies, and the nature of the threat they faced. The cultural exchange was not without its challenges. Human concepts like individual privacy seemed utterly foreign to the axiom, while the aliens' fluid approach to time and causality left the humans struggling to keep up. Days turned into weeks as the Horizon's crew worked tirelessly to absorb as much knowledge as possible. They knew that every scrap of information could be crucial not just for their own survival, but for the fate of Earth and perhaps the entire galaxy. As their time with the axiom drew to a close, Ilara felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. They were returning to Earth with knowledge that would change everything, but also with the weight of a terrible responsibility. "Remember," the axiom's parting words echoed in their minds, "the strength of humanity lies not in your technology or your numbers, but in your spirit. Nurture that spirit, for it may well be the key to our salvation." As the Horizon began its journey back to Earth, Ilara gazed out at the stars, no longer seeing them as distant, unreachable points of light, but as beacons of life and possibility. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew that humanity would face them with courage, ingenuity, and an unbreakable spirit. Little did they know that their greatest test was yet to come, and that the fate of not just Earth, but the entire cosmos would soon rest in their hands. The galactic threat emerges. The return to Earth was met with a mixture of awe, disbelief, and fear. As Commander Ilara Chen stood before the United Nations Security Council, she could feel the weight of every eye in the room upon her. The holographic displays behind her flickered with images of the axiom and the terrible threat they had revealed, the void. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ilara began, her voice steady despite the gravity of her words, "what I'm about to share with you will change the course of human history forever." Over the next few hours, Ilara and her crew recounted their encounter with the axiom and the knowledge they had gained. As they spoke of advanced technologies, interstellar civilizations, and the looming cosmic threat, the room fell into a stunned silence. "This is preposterous," the Russian ambassador finally sputtered, breaking the silence. "You expect us to believe that not only are we not alone in the universe, but that we're about to be thrust into some sort of intergalactic war." Dr. Yuki Tanaka stepped forward, her eyes blazing with conviction. "With all due respect, Ambassador, we don't have the luxury of disbelief. The void is real, and it's coming. Our only hope is to prepare." As the gravity of the situation sank in, the initial skepticism gave way to a flurry of activity. Within days, a global initiative was launched to adapt the alien technologies shared by the axiom. Scientists and engineers from around the world worked tirelessly, pushing the boundaries of human knowledge and capability. Meanwhile, on the far side of the galaxy, the axiom were not idle. They had begun reaching out to other civilizations, forming a coalition to stand against the encroaching darkness. But not all species were as receptive as humanity had been. Aboard the newly christened ESS Defiant, a ship built with a fusion of human ingenuity and axiom technology, Ilara and her crew found themselves ambassadors to the stars. Their mission, to rally more allies to their cause, and to gather intelligence on the movements of the void. As they approached the homeworld of the Scathari, a species of silicon-based lifeforms known for their isolationist tendencies, Lieutenant Rodriguez couldn't help but whistle in appreciation. The planet was a swirling mass of crystalline structures that seemed to defy gravity. "Beautiful," he murmured, "but how do we even begin to communicate with them?" Dr. Tanaka, who had been studying the information provided by the axiom, spoke up. "The Scathari communicate through vibrations in their crystalline bodies. We'll need to use the harmonic resonators to even get their attention." As they entered orbit, the Defiant sent out a carefully calibrated series of vibrations. For several tense moments, there was no response. Then suddenly, the ship was bathed in a dazzling light as a massive crystalline structure rose from the planet's surface. "We are acknowledged," the ship's air announced. "This Scathari are curious." What followed was one of the strangest diplomatic encounters in human history. Unable to communicate through conventional means, Ilara and her team used a combination of mathematical equations, light patterns, and vibrational frequencies to convey their message. As understanding dawned on the Scathari, their entire planet seemed to shudder. Images formed in the crystalline structure, visions of worlds shattered, of darkness consuming all in its path. The void was not unknown to them. They seen it, Ilara realized with a chill. They know what's coming. The negotiations that followed were complex and delicate. The Scathari, for all their advanced technology, were deeply afraid of leaving their homeworld. It took all of Ilara's diplomatic skill, backed by Dr. Tanaka's scientific insights and Lieutenant Rodriguez's unexpected talent for translating human concepts into vibrational patterns, to secure their cooperation. As they left the Scathar space with promises of technological exchange and mutual defense, Ilara couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. They were building an alliance, slowly but surely. But their victory was short-lived. As they prepared to jump to their next destination, alarms blared throughout the ship. "Multiple contacts," Rodriguez shouted from his station. They're not like anything we've seen before." The viewscreen lit up with a terrifying sight. A swarm of ships, if they could be called that, was bearing down on them. They seemed to be made of living shadow, their forms shifting and writhing in ways that hurt the eye to look upon. "The void," Ilara whispered, her blood running cold. "They're here." What followed was a desperate battle for survival. The Defiant's weapons, advanced as they were, seemed to have little effect on the shadow ships. Beams of energy passed right through them, and explosive charges detonated harmlessly in empty space. "We need to think outside the box," Ilara shouted over the chaos of battle. "Dr. Tanaka, you said the void is a force of uncreation. What's the opposite of that?" Tanaka's eyes widened with sudden understanding. "Creation. Commander, if we can reconfigure the harmonic resonators to broadcast on a creative frequency." "Do it," Ilara ordered. As the shadow ships closed in, their very presence seeming to leach the life and energy from everything around them, the Defiant began to hum. It started as a low vibration, barely perceptible, but quickly grew in intensity. To the amazement of the crew, the harmonic waves seemed to have a tangible effect on the void ships. Where the sound waves touched them, the shadows recoiled, their forms becoming more solid and vulnerable. "Now," Ilara commanded, "hit them with everything we've got." The Defiant's weapons blazed, this time finding solid targets. One by one, the shadow ships were destroyed, exploding in bursts of dark energy that quickly dissipated. As the last enemy ship vanished, a stunned silence fell over the bridge. They had done it. They had found a way to fight the void. But their victory came at a cost. The Defiant's systems were strained to the breaking point, and several crew members had collapsed from the mental strain of prolonged exposure to the void's influence. As they limped back to the nearest friendly port for repairs, Ilara knew that this had been just the beginning. The void was aware of them now, and it would not underestimate them again. "Send a message to Earth and the Axiom," she ordered, her voice hoarse but determined. Tell them we've made first contact with the enemy, and we need every resource, every ally we can get. The war has begun." As the Defiant disappeared into hyperspace, the enormity of the conflict ahead weighed heavily on Ilara's mind. They had won at battle, but the war for the very existence of life in the galaxy was just beginning, and humanity, for better or worse, was now at the forefront of that war. Little did they know that their actions had set in motion events that would shake the very foundations of the cosmos and test the limits of what it truly means to be human. Battle for survival. The news of the Defiant's encounter with the Void spread rapidly across the growing coalition of species. What had once been a distant threat was now a terrifying reality. As reports of Void incursions in other sectors began to pour in, the Alliance found itself scrambling to mount a coherent defense. On Earth, the revelation of the Cosmic War sparked a technological revolution unlike anything in human history. The planet's brightest minds worked tirelessly to adapt and improve upon the knowledge shared by the Axiom. Shipyards that once built ocean-going vessels now constructed massive spacefaring warships, while defense satellites capable of generating harmonic resonance fields were hurriedly deployed throughout the solar system. Commander Ilara Chen found herself at the center of this whirlwind of activity. The Defiant, now repaired and upgraded, had become the flagship of Earth's nascent space fleet. As she stood on the bridge, overseeing final preparations for their next mission, Ilara couldn't help but marvel at how far they'd come in such a short time. "Commander," Lieutenant Rodriguez called out, interrupting her reverie, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Axiom." The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the ethereal form of the Axiom representative. Its voice, as always, resonated directly in their minds. "Defenders of Earth," it began, its tone urgent, "we have grave news. A Void armada has been detected on a direct course for the Scathari homeworld. If it falls, a significant portion of our coalition's manufacturing capability will be lost. You must intercept and delay them until reinforcements can arrive." Ilara's heart raced, but her voice remained steady as she replied, "Understood. We'll depart immediately." As the Defiant and its accompanying fleet prepared to jump to Scathari space, Dr. Tanaka approached Ilara, her face etched with concern. "Commander," she said quietly, "I've been analyzing the data from our last encounter with the Void. There's something odd about their behavior. It's almost as if they're learning, adapting to our tactics at an alarming rate." Ilara nodded grimly. "All the more reason to keep them off balance. We can't afford to become predictable." The journey to Scathar was tense, the crew acutely aware of the enormous responsibility resting on their shoulders. As they dropped out of hyperspace, the scene that greeted them was one of chaos and destruction. The Void Armada, a writhing mass of shadow ships that seemed to devour the very light around them, was already engaged with these Scathari defenses. The crystalline ships of the silicon-based lifeforms glittered like stars amidst the darkness, but they were clearly outmatched. "Battle stations," Ilara commanded, her voice ringing out across the bridge. "All ships, form up and prepare to engage. Remember your training, creative frequencies only. Let's show these cosmic abominations what humanity is made of." The human fleet surged forward, harmonic resonators at full power. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Where the resonance waves touched the Void ships, their shadowy forms became more substantial, more vulnerable. But the enemy was not so easily defeated. As Ilara watched in horror, several of the shadow ships seemed to merge, forming a massive construct that dwarfed even the largest human vessels. "Evasive maneuvers," she shouted, but it was too late. A beam of pure darkness lanced out from the merged Void entity, slicing through 3 human ships as if they were made of paper. The crews didn't even have time to scream as they were erased from existence. "We need a new strategy," Dr. Tanaka said urgently. "The harmonic resonance is working, but not quickly enough. We need to amplify it somehow." Lieutenant Rodriguez's eyes lit up with an idea. "These Scathari, their entire planet is basically one giant crystal. If we could use it as a resonator, it could work, Tanaka agreed, but the power requirements would be enormous. We'd have to divert all non-essential systems, maybe even life support. Ilara made her decision in an instant. Do it. Open a channel to this Cathari. Explain what we need. As the battle raged on, with losses mounting on both sides, the human fleet maneuvered into position around Scathar. The planet's surface began to glow as it absorbed the energy being channeled into it. Now, Ilara commanded. The result was beyond anything they could have imagined. A wave of creative energy burst forth from Scathar, expanding outward at the speed of light. Where it touched the void ships, they didn't just become vulnerable, they began to unravel. The shadowy forms twisted and writhed as if in agony. Some exploded into bursts of dark matter, while others seemed to implode, collapsing in on themselves until nothing remained. In a matter of minutes, the tide of battle had turned. The remaining void ships, those that hadn't been caught in the initial wave, began a hasty retreat. As the dust settled and damage reports began to come in, Ilara allowed herself a moment of relief. They had won against all odds, but the cost had been high. Nearly a third of the human fleet had been lost, and this Cathari homeworld, while saved, had been changed by the enormous energies channeled through it. As she prepared to send a report back to Earth, Ilara couldn't shake the feeling that this victory, as significant as it was only the beginning. The void had been driven back, but not defeated, and something told her that their next encounter would be even more challenging. "Commander," Rodriguez called out, his voice tight with tension. "Long-range sensors are picking up something. Big. It's at the edge of the system, but it's moving fast." Ilara's blood ran cold as she saw the readings. Whatever was coming, it made the armada they had just faced look like a scouting party in comparison. "Send word to Earth and all our allies," she ordered, her voice steady despite the fear gripping her heart. Tell them we've won the battle, but the war is far from over. And we're going to need every ship, every weapon, every scrap of courage we can muster for what's coming next." As the message was transmitted, Ilara gazed out at the star-filled void, wondering what new horrors it held. One thing was certain: humanity's greatest test was yet to come, and the fate of the entire galaxy hung in the balance. The human factor. The aftermath of the Battle of Scathar sent shockwaves through the Galactic Alliance. While the victory had been hard-won, it had also exposed vulnerabilities in their defenses and raised troubling questions about the true nature and capabilities of the Void. As the Defiant limped back to Earth for repairs and debriefing, Commander Ilara Chen found herself grappling with the enormity of what they had experienced. The ship's corridors were eerily quiet, the crew subdued by their losses, and the knowledge that an even greater threat loomed on the horizon. Upon their return, Ilara and her senior staff were immediately summoned to a high-level meeting at the newly established Galactic Defense Headquarters. Representatives from various alien species were present, their forms ranging from the ethereal axiom to the crystalline Scathari and a dozen other bizarre physiologies. The axiom representative spoke first, its thoughts resonating in the minds of all present. The Battle of Scathar was a significant victory, but at a terrible cost. Some among our alliance are questioning the wisdom of involving the humans so deeply in this conflict. A ripple of unease passed through the room. Ilara felt a surge of indignation, but before she could speak, a Scathari representative chimed in, its crystalline form vibrating with each word. The humans' tactic with our homeworld was effective, yes, but also reckless. The long-term consequences to our planet are yet unknown. How can we trust such an unpredictable species with the fate of the galaxy? Murmurs of agreement echoed from several of the alien delegates. Ilara's hands clenched into fists as she struggled to maintain her composure. It was Dr. Tanaka who finally broke the tension, her voice calm but filled with conviction. "With all due respect," she began, "it's precisely our unpredictability that makes us valuable in this fight. The Void adapts quickly, yes, but so do we. Our entire history is filled with examples of human ingenuity in the face of overwhelming odds. Lieutenant Rodriguez nodded in agreement. We're not just fighting with technology here, we're fighting with ideas, with creativity. And that's something humans have in spades. The room fell silent as the aliens considered this perspective. The Axiom representative seemed to shimmer with interest. Perhaps you are right, but we need more than words. We need a plan. Ilara stepped forward, her mind racing. I have a proposal, she said, her voice steady. But it's risky, and it will require resources from every member of the Alliance. Over the next few hours, Ilara laid out a daring strategy. Instead of trying to match the Void's overwhelming force head-on, they would use a series of guerrilla-style attacks, striking at weak points and disappearing before the enemy could retaliate. But the key to the plan was something uniquely human, a psychological warfare campaign. The Void feeds on fear and despair, Ilara explained. So we give them hope. We broadcast stories of our victories, real and exaggerated, across every frequency. We create legends, myths that will inspire our allies and unsettle our enemies. The alien representatives were skeptical at first, but as Ilara and her team elaborated on the plan, mixing hard tactical data with creative narrative strategies, they began to see the potential. It's insane, the Scathari representative vibrated. But it just might work. With tentative approval from the Alliance, Operation Lightbringer was put into motion. Over the next few months, human ships, augmented with the best technology the Alliance could offer, launched a series of daring raids against Void outposts and supply lines. Each victory, no matter how small, was woven into an ever-growing tapestry of legend. The Defiant became known as the Shadow Breaker, its exploits told and retold across 1,000 worlds. Ilara, much to her embarrassment, found herself transformed into a near-mythical figure, a beacon of hope in the darkness. But it wasn't just military victories that turned the tide. Human artists, writers, and musicians recruited to create works that captured the spirit of the resistance. Alien species who had never heard of Shakespeare now quoted Hamlet in times of doubt. The Scathari, inspired by human music, began experimenting with crystalline harmonies that could disrupt Void communications. As the legends grew, so did the Alliance. Species that had been hesitant to join the fight now clamored to be part of the human miracle. Volunteers flooded in, inspired by tales of heroism and defiance. The Void, for the first time, seemed to falter. Its attacks became less coordinated, its strategies more predictable. It was as if the wave of hope sweeping through the galaxy was anathema to its very nature. But just as victory seemed within reach, disaster struck. A massive Void fleet, larger than any they had encountered before, emerged from the depths of space. Its target, Earth. As the call to defend humanity's homeworld went out, Ilara found herself facing the greatest challenge of her life. The fate of not just Earth, but the entire Galactic Alliance hung in the balance. Standing on the bridge of the Defiant, now accompanied by a fleet of ships from 100 different worlds, Ilara felt a mix of fear and determination. This was the moment that would define not just her career, but the future of her species. All ships, this is Commander Chen, she broadcast, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. We stand here not just as humans, not just as individual species, but as the united front of life itself. The Void seeks to unmake all that we are, all that we could be. But we have something they can never understand: hope, love, the unbreakable spirit of sentient beings everywhere. As the Void fleet approached, casting its terrible shadow across the solar system, Ilara gave the order to engage. The battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy had begun. Little did anyone know that the true nature of the Void, and humanity's unique role in the cosmic drama, was about to be revealed in a way that would shake the foundations of reality itself. Secrets unveiled. The battle for Earth raged across the solar system, a spectacle of light and shadow that would have been beautiful if it weren't so terrifying. The combined fleet of the Galactic Alliance, led by the Defiant, clashed with the Void Armada in a desperate struggle for survival. Commander Elara Chen's strategy of unpredictability and psychological warfare had served them well, but even she had to admit that they were outnumbered and outgunned. For every Void ship they managed to destroy, 2 more seemed to take its place. "We can't keep this up forever," Lieutenant Rodriguez shouted over the chaos of the bridge. "We need a game changer." As if in answer to his plea, Dr. Tanaka burst onto the bridge, her eyes wild with excitement and fear. "Commander, I've discovered something impossible." "Kind of busy right now, Doctor," Elara replied, gritting her teeth as another blast rocked the ship. "You don't understand," Tanaka insisted. "I've been analyzing the Void energy signatures, comparing them to our own, and I found similarities." This caught Elara's attention. "What do you mean, similarities?" Tanaka took a deep breath. "The Void, it's not just some cosmic force of destruction. It's us, or rather, it's what we could become." A stunned silence fell over the bridge, broken only by the distant sounds of battle. "Explain," Elara demanded. "The Void is a possible future," Tanaka said, her words tumbling out in a rush. "A future where sentient life evolved to transcend physical form, but in doing so, lost touch with the very essence of what made them alive. They became beings of pure energy, pure thought, but also pure entropy." The implications were staggering. The enemy they had been fighting wasn't some alien other, but a dark reflection of themselves. "But how does this help us?" Rodriguez asked, voicing the question on everyone's mind. Tanaka's eyes gleamed. "Because if the Void is a possible future, then we can change it. We can show them another way." Even as Tanaka spoke, a massive Void construct, easily the size of a small moon, emerged from the shadows of Sechen. Its very presence seemed to drain the energy from everything around it. "I hope you have a plan, Doctor," Elara said, her voice tight. "Because we're running out of time." Tanaka nodded. "We need to establish direct communication with the Void. Not just fighting, not just resisting, but actually talking to them, reminding them of what they once were." It was a crazy plan, bordering on suicidal. But as Elara looked around at her crew, at the fleet of alien ships fighting alongside them, she realized they had no other choice. "All right," she said. "How do we do this?" The plan they cobbled together was desperate and dangerous. Using a combination of axiom technology and human intuition, they would attempt to create a psychic link with the Void entity. Elara, as the symbol of humanity's resistance, would be the one to make contact. As the Defiant maneuvered into position, protected by a screen of allied ships, Elara felt a moment of doubt. What if this didn't work? What if she wasn't strong enough? "Remember," Tanaka said softly, placing a hand on Elara's shoulder. "You're not just you anymore. You're carrying the hopes and dreams of every sentient being in the galaxy." Elara nodded, took a deep breath, and activated the device. The sensation was unlike anything she had ever experienced. Her consciousness expanded, reaching out across the void of space. She felt the minds of her crew, of the alien allies, all connected in a web of thought and emotion. And then she felt it. The void. It was vast, ancient, and filled with a loneliness so profound it took her breath away. "Who are you?" The thought wasn't words, but pure concept. "I am Elara Chen," she responded, pushing images of Earth, of humanity, of all the allied species. "We are life. We are what you once were." There was a sense of confusion, then recognition. "We remember, but it was so long ago. So much pain, so much chaos." "Yes," Elara agreed. "Life can be painful. It can be chaotic. But it's also beautiful. It's joy, it's love, it's the very essence of creation." She poured every memory, every emotion she could muster into the connection. The taste of her mother's cooking, the thrill of her first space flight, the camaraderie of her crew, the wonder of alien worlds. And it wasn't just her memories. Through the psychic link, the experiences of countless beings flooded into the void. The crystalline songs of the Scathari, the cosmic dances of the Axiom, the simple joys and sorrows of 1,000 different species. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the void began to change. The all-consuming darkness began to recede, replaced by swirls of color and light. On the bridge of the Defiant, the crew watched in awe as the massive void construct began to transform. It was as if a universe was being born before their eyes. When Elara finally opened her eyes, she found herself looking at a being of pure energy, but not the destructive force they had been fighting. This was something new, something filled with the potential for creation rather than destruction. We remember now, the being communicated, its thoughts a symphony of rediscovered emotions. We had forgotten what it meant to truly live. You have reminded us. As the transformed void entities began to retreat, not in defeat, but in a journey of rediscovery, Elara felt a wave of relief wash over her. They had done it, not through force of arms, but through the very essence of what made them sentient beings. But even as the crew of the Defiant began to celebrate, Elara couldn't shake the feeling that this was not the end, but rather the beginning of something even greater. The galaxy had changed, and with it, the very nature of existence itself. As she looked out at the stars, now seeming brighter than ever before, Elara Chen knew that humanity's greatest adventure was just beginning, the final stand. The transformation of the void had brought a momentary peace to the galaxy, but it was not to last. As news of the event spread, reactions varied wildly across the Alliance. Some hailed it as a miracle, a testament to the power of understanding and empathy. Others, however, saw it as a threat, a fundamental change to the cosmic order that they neither understood nor trusted. In the weeks that followed, tensions began to rise. Some species, fearful of the transformed void entities, began to militarize. Others sought to communicate with them, to learn from their vast ancient knowledge. Earth found itself at the center of a political and philosophical maelstrom. Commander Elara Chen, now hailed as both hero and heretic across the galaxy, found herself summoned to an emergency council of the Alliance. As she entered the vast chamber, she could feel the weight of countless alien gazes upon her. The Axiom representative spoke first, its thoughts tinged with a mixture of awe and concern. Commander Chen, your actions have altered the very fabric of our reality. Some would call it a victory, others, a catastrophe. Elara stood tall, her voice steady as she addressed the assembly. What we did was necessary. We didn't just save ourselves. We saved the void from itself. We showed that understanding and compassion can overcome even the greatest of threats. A murmur rippled through the gathered representatives. The Scathari delegate vibrated with agitation. And what of the consequences? These transformed entities, can we trust them? What if they decide to save us next? Before Elara could respond, alarms blared throughout the chamber. A holographic display flickered to life, showing a massive anomaly forming at the edge of the galaxy. Dr. Tanaka, who had been monitoring the situation, gasped. It's a temporal rift. Something's coming through, from the future. The chamber erupted into chaos as a fleet of ships unlike anything they had ever seen emerged from the rift. They were sleek, almost organic in design, pulsing with an energy that seemed to bend light around them. A transmission cut through the panic, and a familiar yet alien voice filled the chamber. Greetings, ancestors. We are what you will become. Elara's mind reeled. These weren't invaders. They were humanity's descendants, changed by eons of evolution and the merger with the transformed void. The future humans explained that the transformation of the void had created a temporal paradox. In their timeline, the war had raged for millennia, reshaping both humanity and the void into something new. But now, with the early resolution of the conflict, that future was in jeopardy. We have come to ensure that the crucible of conflict that forged us still occurs, the future human leader stated. For the good of the galaxy, the war must continue. Elara felt a chill run down her spine. Everything they had fought for, everything they had sacrificed, was being threatened not by an external enemy, but by their own potential future. In that moment, Elara Chen made a decision that would echo across time and space. "No," she said, her voice ringing with determination. "We will not sacrifice our present for your future. We choose a different path." What followed was not a battle of weapons, but of ideals. Elara and her allies, human, alien, and transformed void alike, stood together against the future that sought to enforce its own existence. They argued, debated, and shared visions of a universe where growth came not from conflict, but from cooperation and mutual understanding. As the temporal rift began to fluctuate, the future humans found themselves faced with a choice: cling to their own existence or embrace the uncertain potential of a new timeline. In the end, it was a young ensign from the Defiant who tipped the scales. She stepped forward, addressing her future kin with tears in her eyes. "You are what we might become, but we are what you once were. Remember the hope, the wonder, the love that drove us to the stars in the first place. Don't let that be lost." The chamber fell silent as the future humans considered her words. Then, slowly, they began to change. The hard edges of their forms softened, the cold logic in their eyes replaced by a warm glow of rediscovered emotion. "We remember," they said, "their voices a chorus of realization, and we choose to let go." As the future humans faded from existence, embracing the uncertainty of a new timeline, the temporal rift collapsed in on itself. The gathered representatives of the galaxy stood in awe, witnesses to the birth of a new cosmic age. In the years that followed, the galaxy entered an unprecedented era of peace and discovery. The transformed void entities, no longer driven by entropy, became teachers and explorers. The Alliance, forged in war, now turned its efforts to unlocking the mysteries of the universe. And at the heart of it all was humanity, young, brash, and full of potential. They had faced extinction and emerged not just victorious, but transformed. They had reminded the galaxy of the power of choice, of the strength found in diversity, and of the enduring spirit that defines all sentient life. As Elara Chen stood on the bridge of the Defiant, now embarking on a mission of exploration rather than war, she looked out at the star-filled expanse before her. The future was unwritten, full of challenges and wonders beyond imagination. But whatever lay ahead, she knew that they would face it together, not as separate species, but as a united cosmos. "Where to next?" Lieutenant Rodriguez asked, a spark of excitement in his eyes. Elara smiled, feeling the weight of possibility in every word. "Everywhere," she said. "We're going everywhere." And with that, the Defiant leaped into hyperspace, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of a galaxy reborn. The true adventure, Elara realized, was just beginning.